Hello everyone. Today we will talk about Sun Tzu's The Art of War. The Art of War is a manual, more accurately, the reference manual, on military strategy, still widely cited and commented on today. It was written between the 6th and 3rd centuries BCE, although the exact date is uncertain. It's even more uncertain because its author, Sun Tzu, remains a mysterious figure. Some specialists claim that he may never have existed, or at least that there is no definitive proof of his existence. For others, he was a nobleman from the kingdom of Qi who studied military strategy for years before becoming an advisor to the king. His advice supposedly helped the king conquer numerous regions in ancient China, as most wars at the time were internal conflicts. However, whether Sun Tzu truly existed or not is ultimately unimportant, because what interests us today is the content of his book, The Art of War. Let me clarify right away. This is not a philosophical work, though it can be approached philosophically. It's a guide to conflict, efficiency, and intelligence, from which we can draw philosophical insights. To set the tone, I'll start with an anecdote attributed to Sun Tzu. He proposed to the king to demonstrate how to command an army. For this, he asked the king to gather 180 of his servants. The king had several concubines, and Sun Tzu chose 2 of them to act as officers. He instructed them that, at his command, they were to turn to the right. Sun Tzu gave the order, "Right!" The concubines burst into laughter, not taking the exercise seriously. Sun Tzu turned to the king and said, "When an order is not executed, it is because it was not communicated clearly. The fault lies with the general." He asked the concubines if they could distinguish their right from their left, to which they replied, "Yes." Sun Tzu repeated the order, "Right!" Again, the concubines laughed. This time, Sun Tzu turned back to the king and said, "When an order is not executed despite being clearly communicated, the officers are at fault." He then ordered the execution of the 2 concubines, which was carried out. From that moment on, all the servants understood the gravity of the situation and obeyed as one. The moral of this story is that in military matters, sentimentality has no place. Pity and compassion have no room on the battlefield. The only thing that matters is victory, which requires ruthlessness. For Sun Tzu, the end justifies the means. War, by definition, is immoral. The nature of the means employed is irrelevant. What matters is the result, the victory. If achieving victory necessitates killing innocents or lying, then so be it. Sun Tzu equates the art of war with the art of deception, lying, and manipulation. When we think of war, we often think of weapons, guns, missiles, bombs, or soldiers, those who wield the weapons. In other words, we associate war with the application of brute force. An army is feared for its material strength. However, that Sun Tzu teaches us that it doesn't work that way. Strength is important, he acknowledges, but it's not the determining factor. Strategy, he asserts, is what truly matters. Strategy is the comprehensive plan that ensures force is only used when absolutely necessary. Effective strategy often allows one to achieve victory with minimal or no direct conflict. Creating confusion among the enemy is a strategic approach. Confusion leads to errors, and errors create opportunities. A war is not only won through one's own successes, but also by exploiting the mistakes of the adversary, much like in chess or boxing. A boxer doesn't win solely by punching harder. He wins by capitalizing on his opponent's errors, poor posture, bad conditioning, or an unguarded stance. Sun Tzu argues that an efficient war minimizes combat. Victory should depend not on one's brute strength, but on the ability to manipulate the enemy's forces. In Western imagery, Chinese martial arts are often associated with honor, sacrifice, and virtue. However, for Sun Tzu, war is too critical to entertain such notions. The goal of war is efficiency, not personal glory or heroism. Sacrifice, he states, is a sign of poor strategy. Military strategy is about economy of force. It is not about honor or virtue, as survival takes precedence over morality. Sun Tzu's ideas resonate with those of Machiavelli, who also wrote about the art of war. Machiavelli argued that political power hinges on strategy and that the best strategists prioritize effectiveness over morality. Similarly, Sun Tzu emphasized that war is based on appearances and deception. By feigning weakness when strong or misleading the enemy about one's intentions, one gains a tactical advantage. This involves not just simulation, but anticipation, using intelligence to predict and exploit the consequences of actions. For Sun Tzu, war is akin to a game of chess, or Go. Both require foresight and deliberate planning. Success depends on anticipating the opponent's moves and counter-moves. This is intelligence at work, reasoned projection based on causal analysis. Impulsive actions, driven by emotions like anger or vengeance, lead to errors and defeat. Emotional detachment and calm, rational planning are essential in conflict. Ultimately, Sun Tzu's message is clear. War is about control. Control over one's army, emotions, and the enemy. A rational approach to conflict, free from emotional interference, paves the way to victory. Understanding one's adversary, rather than hating them, the next action is thus to tackle what I cannot do if I am blinded by my emotions. Our emotions narrow our focus. We become fixated on them and lose sight of everything else. When Spinoza says not to lament, not to curse, but to understand, he is expressing the same idea as Sun Tzu. He implies that understanding is more beneficial than emotion, and that, to fight someone, one must strive to understand them. When you argue with your boss, a friend, or your partner, your motivation is not to understand the other person, but to assert yourself and prove your point. What drives us in a conflict is the desire for recognition, the desire for the other person to yield and acknowledge that we are right. This is an ego-driven conflict. The problem is that the other party likely feels the same way. In such situations, the stronger the emotional involvement, the higher the risk of making a misstep, saying something that shouldn't have been said, something that will harm you. Thus, the art of war is based on emotional detachment and disengagement. To put it another way, war is not personal. It echoes Michael Corleone's line in The Godfather, "It's not personal, it's strictly business." A rule Michael later breaks when he kills his brother Fredo for betraying him, saying, "You broke my heart." At that moment, it was personal. Notably, The Godfather is a very long film with sparse action. However, when there is action, it is swift. That's because an offensive must be brief, as Sun Tzu teaches us. Most of the time is spent not attacking, but reflecting and devising a strategy, the most Machiavellian strategy possible. Only when the strategy is well defined does one proceed to action. This aligns with why the art of war is highly regarded in business and finance. Investors will tell you that not investing can often mean saving money. This highlights the idea that the desire to act must be tempered by the wisdom of knowing when it is beneficial to act. Waiting is thus part of a winning strategy. Saying that not investing saves money underscores that a mistake is always a loss, and sometimes patience is the key, a mark of mastering one's emotions. Interestingly, the term invest is used in both financial and military contexts. Investing money, investing a territory. In The Godfather, another reference to Sun Tzu is the phrase, "Keep your friends close and your enemies closer." This aligns with Sun Tzu's teaching, "Know yourself and know your enemy." Knowing your enemy is the golden rule of the art of war because it encapsulates other key principles. Knowledge trumps brute force, reason outweighs emotion, and war is not about ego. Effective warfare requires stepping into the enemy's perspective, thinking and seeing as they do. To set a trap, you must think like your adversary. Paradoxically, the art of war relies on a form of strategic empathy. In business, this is mirrored by understanding the customer's perspective, seeing as they do, to anticipate their needs. When discussing war, we often think of physical strength, weapons, soldiers, and equipment. But there is another form of strength to consider, mental strength, or morale. Sun Tzu emphasizes that psychology is a critical element in warfare. Manipulating morale, both bolstering your troops and undermining the enemies, is a vital strategy. In the modern era, this has evolved into propaganda. In wartime, information is a strategic weapon. Propaganda is designed to rally public opinion, support soldiers, and give governments the freedom to act. War is now both operational and informational. Disinformation blurs the line between true and false information, creating useful or harmful narratives depending on the objectives. This is not unique to one state, but a universal aspect of conflict. The underlying principle is the same. Effective strategy, even if it involves manipulation, serves the higher interest of the nation. Sun Tzu's teachings remind us that intelligence, not brute force, leads to victory. Intelligence illuminates the path, allowing one to foresee consequences before acting. Prometheus's myth and Lucifer's symbolism also underscore intelligence as the power to foresee and act effectively. Ultimately, the most dangerous thing in the world is not brute force, but intelligence wielded for malevolent purposes. Both Sun Tzu and the notion of Satan recognize that victory stems from understanding one's opponent. When intelligence is used wisely, conflict can be avoided altogether. Sun Tzu states, "Know your enemy and know yourself, and in 100 battles you will never be in peril. If you do not know your enemy but know yourself, you will win one and lose one. If you know neither, you are doomed to fail."